right, so today we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff,
Oh, yeah.
Chapter 5 of the Dao De Jing.
Yep.
And I'm already feeling a little shaken up by it, honestly, this whole concept that the Dao De Jing is like totally impartial.
Right.
It's not really a comforting thought, is it?
It definitely can challenge our assumptions.
Right.
We tend to see the world through a very human lens, with our own ideas about, fairness and morality and all that.
Yeah, totally. And then Laozi comes along and he's like, nope, step back, look at the bigger picture. The universe doesn't care about your...
It doesn't play by our rules.
Human rules, right? And the way he describes it is pretty intense, too. Like comparing heaven and earth to, what is it, dogs of grass?
Dogs of grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, those ritual objects that get used and then just tossed aside.
Yeah. Like, yikes.
It's a stark image for sure.
Powerful image. But it really drives home this point that nature doesn't operate on sentimentality. Like a hurricane doesn't care if it causes damage. A forest fire doesn't exactly discriminate.
Not personal.
It's not personal.
Right.
It just is. And I was thinking about this nature documentary I saw.
Oh, yeah.
About a volcanic eruption, and this whole town was buried in ash just like that. It's tragic.
Yeah.
But it's true what you said. It wasn't personal in nature.
It just is.
Just is. And that's where Laozi really seems to break away from someone like Confucius, right?
Totally different worldview.
Yeah.
And Confucius was all about, ran this idea of human-heartedness.
Yeah.
Very human-centered morality.
Okay.
But Laozi's like, flip the script.
Yeah.
Even the sage, the ideal leader, embodies this natural impartiality.
Okay, so not exactly a benevolent shepherd guiding the flock then. It's more like the universe doesn't play favorites at all.
Yeah, the universe doesn't play at all.
Whoa. Okay, I like that.
Have you ever, tried to force a plant to grow faster?
Oh, yeah, I am so guilty of being that impatient gardener.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, does it?
It does not work. You can provide the right conditions.
Right.
But ultimately, that plant's going to grow according to its own nature.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Laozi means by wu wei, this non-action.
Okay.
It's not about doing nothing. It's about aligning your actions with the natural flow of the Tao.
So a Daoist leader then isn't like micromanaging or trying to control every outcome.
No.
They're more like facilitators?
Exactly. Setting things up and then letting nature take its course.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of leadership, Dao Master Chao, in that lecture that you shared, he had this great analogy. He compared the sage's leadership to how air fuels a fire.
It's a great one.
Yeah, you don't see the air, but it's essential.
Absolutely.
It's this unseen force that allows things to flourish.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how much control we actually have, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. So if nature is this impartial force, and even the wisest leaders are supposed to embody that, then where does that leave us? Yeah. Where does real power come from?
Right, that's the big question.
Yeah.
And it leads us to one of the most fascinating metaphors in the entire Dao De Jing.
Okay.
The bellows.
Okay.
Laozi compares the space between heaven and earth to a bellows. Empty, yet capable of generating immense power.
Yeah, empty but not a void.
Right.
It's full of possibility.
Full of possibility.
It's like an empty bowl.
Yeah.
It's only useful because it can be filled.
Exactly.
It's the emptiness that gives it purpose.
Absolutely. That emptiness, which Daoists call zhu, is the source of all creation. It's not nothingness.
Okay.
It's potential waiting to unfold.
Yeah, so the bellows generates power through its emptiness and movement.
Emptiness and movement.
And in the same way, the sage doesn't try to impose their will.
Right.
They allow the Dao to work through them.
To work through them, exactly.
Okay, so they're not trying to fill that emptiness with their own ego or desires.
Yeah, not at all.
They're stepping aside.
They're stepping aside.
To let something bigger take over.
Yes, becoming a conduit for the Dao.
Wow.
It's like, imagine a dancer who's so in tune with the music that their movements become effortless.
Yeah.
Almost like the music is moving them.
Okay.
That's the kind of harmony Laozi's talking about.
I'm starting to get it, I think. But if words can't fully capture the Dao, how do we even begin to understand it?
Yeah, and that's where Laozi's warning about the limitations of language comes in.
Right.
He says too many words lead to exhaustion and cloud our understanding.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in our heads that we lose touch with what's actually happening around us.
So it's less about thinking then and more about feeling trusting our intuition.
Right. It's about finding that balance between intellect and intuition.
Yeah.
Our minds are powerful tools, but they can also be traps.
Right.
Sometimes we need to quiet the mental chatter and just allow ourselves to experience the Tao directly.
So in a world that's constantly bombarding us with information, maybe what we need is more silence, more time to just be present.
Be present.
Tap into that deeper understanding.
Tao. Master Chu calls this finding your centrality.
Okay.
He likens it to martial arts. If your center of gravity is off, you're gonna fall.
Right.
So how do you find that inner balance point? How do you cultivate that stillness amidst all the chaos?
Yeah.
That's something we're gonna explore as we continue our deep dive.
Okay, I am ready.
All right.
So we've said that the Tao is this like impartial force, right? It works outside of, our human ideas of good and bad, right? And honestly, that's kind of scary.
It can be.
I mean, does that mean our lives are meaningless? Do our choices even matter if nature just treats us all like those dogs of grass?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what we were talking about with the bellows.
Okay.
You know how its power comes from emptiness and movement?
Right.
So it's not about resisting that emptiness.
Oh, okay.
It's about working with it.
Okay.
In the same way, maybe our power comes from aligning ourselves with the natural flow of the Tao.
Okay.
Not trying to fight against it.
So instead of trying to force our will on the world, we should be more receptive, kind of go with the flow instead of constantly swimming upstream.
Exactly. Letting go of that rigid control.
Okay.
Tao Master Chow talked about finding your centrality, that inner balance point. Think of it like a tree bending in the wind. It doesn't break. It adapts.
Okay.
And when we're centered, we can move through life with more grace and ease.
Yeah.
Even when things get tough.
Yeah.
And that's where Wu Wei comes in.
Okay.
It's not about passivity.
Right.
But about acting in a way that's effortless.
Okay.
And aligned with the Tao.
So not forcing things, but letting them unfold naturally.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds great in theory, but honestly, it feels a little paradoxical. How can we achieve anything if we're not actively striving for it?
Have you ever noticed how sometimes when you finally relax and stop obsessing over something, things actually start working out better?
You know, that's totally true. I remember this one time I was stressing over this job interview and I was so focused on getting it right that I totally froze up.
I've been there.
But then on the way home, I just kind of surrendered to the whole thing. I was like, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
And you know what? I ended up getting the job.
There you go.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like we get so caught up in our plans and expectations that we block the natural flow of things.
We do.
But when we embrace this Wu Wei, when we let go of that control, we open ourselves up to possibilities we might never have imagined.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's less about dictating the terms and more about being open to what unfolds.
I like that.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, how do we actually cultivate that kind of Wu Wei in our lives, you know? Especially in a world that feels so chaotic and unpredictable.
Well, Laozi really emphasizes the importance of stillness and introspection.
Okay.
You know, he warns about excessive speech and intellectualization.
Right.
He says too much thinking can actually cloud our understanding.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the Tao is beyond words.
So that's where that idea of silence over speech comes in, which feels almost counterintuitive in our modern world.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with information.
Yes, we are.
But you're saying we need to create that inner silence to really connect with the Tao.
Think of it like this. When was the last time you truly unplugged? Disconnected from all the distractions and just allowed yourself to be present?
Honestly, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Too long, probably. I'm definitely guilty of being plugged in 24/7.
We all are to some extent. But remember, the Tao is always there.
Right.
Waiting for us to tune in.
Yeah.
It's in the quiet moments.
Yeah.
The spaces between the thoughts. That's where we find our centrality. That inner balance point.
Right.
That allows us to navigate the chaos with more grace and ease.
Okay, so we're talking about finding that balance between action and non-action.
Right.
It's not about being passive or indifferent.
It's about being more intentional.
Right.
More aligned with the natural flow of things.
But honestly, it still feels a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
If we accept that the Tao is impartial, that our lives are just a small part of this grand cosmic dance,
yeah.
Doesn't that kind of diminish our sense of agency?
Yeah.
Does it mean we should just give up on our goals
No, not at all.
and ambitions?
It's about shifting our perspective.
Okay.
Instead of seeing our goals as fixed destinations,
Okay.
think of them as directions we're moving in. We can still have aspirations, but we hold them lightly,
Okay.
allowing for flexibility and unexpected detours along the way.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, we never really know how things are going to play out, do we?
I guess not. So it's more about embracing the journey,
Exactly.
the twists and turns, rather than clinging to a specific outcome.
Yeah, and that takes a certain amount of trust, doesn't it? Trust in the process, trust in the tale.
Okay. I can see how that could be both terrifying
You can't.
and incredibly liberating.
Yes.
But how do we make choices then?
Right.
If we're not supposed to cling to our desires and expectations, how do we know which path to take?
That's where our intuition comes in.
Okay.
When we're grounded and centered, our inner compass becomes clearer. We start to sense which actions feel aligned with the day
Okay.
and which ones feel forced or out of sync.
So it's not about abandoning our desires.
Right.
It's about refining them.
Right.
Letting go of the ones that are driven by ego or fear and embracing the ones that feel truly authentic.
Beautifully put.
Okay.
It's about aligning our actions with our deepest values, with what truly matters to us.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot between action and non-action.
Right.
Where we're engaged with the world, but not attached to specific outcomes.
This is really shifting my whole perspective.
Yeah.
It's like instead of trying to control everything, we become more like dancers, moving with the music of the universe.
Yeah.
And when I think about it in terms of leadership, it makes so much sense.
It does.
Instead of trying to control everything and everyone,
Right.
a true leader creates the conditions for others to thrive.
Yes.
They become that subtle, essential force, like the air fueling a fire.
And if we bring it back to that idea of nature's impartiality, it's not about whether we deserve good or bad things to happen to us.
Right.
It's about how we respond to whatever life throws our way.
Okay.
Because things will happen.
Yeah.
There will be storms. There will be fires.
Right.
There will be moments that challenge us to our core. The question is, how will we meet those challenges?
Yeah.
Will we resist and break?
Right.
Or will we bend and adapt?
That's such a powerful way to frame it.
It is.
It's not about avoiding the difficult stuff. It's about finding that inner strength and resilience to weather the storm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, emptiness is potential.
Right.
When we face a difficult situation,
Yeah.
instead of getting stuck in fear or despair,
Right.
we can tap into that emptiness,
Yeah.
that potential for growth and transformation.
So the obstacle becomes the teacher.
The obstacle becomes the teacher.
Exactly.
This is blowing my mind a little, I have to admit.
Yeah.
So much to think about, so much to unpack.
We've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah.
We've talked about the Tao's impartiality, how it challenges our human-centered view. We've explored the power of emptiness, the wisdom of Wu Wei.
Yeah.
But how do we actually bring this ancient wisdom into our modern lives?
Right.
How do we live it day by day?
Yeah.
Let's explore those practical applications next. Okay, so we've explored all these like really profound concepts, right? This whole idea of nature's impartiality, the power of emptiness, the wisdom of aligning ourselves with the Tao.
Right.
But honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how to actually live this stuff. Like I can't exactly go full hermit and live in a cave, tempting as that sounds sometimes.
I hear you. But the beautiful thing about the Tao is that it's not about escaping the world.
Yeah.
It's about seeing the world with new eyes, with a deeper understanding of the forces at play.
So instead of trying to escape the world,
Right.
we embrace it, but with a new awareness.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think about it in terms of your relationships. How often do we try to control or change the people around us?
All the time.
We want them to behave a certain way to meet our expectations.
Yeah.
But what happens when we do that?
Well, speaking from experience, it usually creates a lot of friction.
Yeah.
And honestly, it never really works.
It does.
People are who they are. Right. But you're saying a Daoist approach would be to accept people as they are, even if they don't fit our ideal.
Remember that image of the dogs of grass?
Right.
The sage treats everyone with that same kind of impartiality.
Okay.
Not with indifference,
Right.
but with a deep acceptance of their inherent nature.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that everyone is on their own journey,
Yeah.
their own unique path of unfolding.
Right.
And our job isn't to force them onto a different path,
Okay.
but to honor their journey. even if we don't fully understand it.
So it's less about trying to mold people into who
Yeah.
we think they should be,
Right.
and more about appreciating them for who they are.
Exactly. And that acceptance, paradoxically, can actually lead to a much deeper connection.
Okay.
When we let go of our need to control relationships,
Yeah.
can flow more naturally, more authentically.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. But what about work?
Right.
I mean, our whole society is built on this idea of striving, achievement competition.
Yeah. How does the Dao De Jing fit into that world?
That's where the concept of wu-wei becomes really powerful.
Okay.
It's not about giving up ambition or becoming lazy,
Right.
but about finding that effortless flow in our work.
Okay.
It's about aligning our actions with our purpose, with our centrality.
Right.
So that work becomes an expression of who we truly are.
So it's about doing work that feels meaningful,
Yes.
that aligns with our values.
Exactly.
Not just chasing external rewards or validation.
Think of it like a craftsman who's so skilled, so in tune with their craft,
Okay.
that their work becomes almost effortless. It's not about forcing anything. It's about allowing the skill to flow through them.
Yeah.
And the result is something truly beautiful and unique.
Right.
When we find that alignment work becomes less about striving
Okay.
and more about expressing our unique gifts and talents,
Yeah.
it becomes a form of art, a way of participating in the creative flow of the Tao.
Wow, that's such a refreshing way to think about work.
It is, but what about those times when things get tough? When we face setbacks or challenges,
Yeah.
it's easy to talk about going with the flow when everything's going smoothly.
Yeah.
But how does this Daoist perspective help us navigate those difficult moments?
That's where the impartiality of nature becomes really important to remember.
Okay.
Difficulties are just as much a part of the natural cycle as joy and success.
Right.
The Dao De Jing reminds us not to resist those challenges,
Okay.
but to learn from them, to grow through them. Think of it like a tree with deep roots. When the storm comes, it bends but doesn't break.
So it's about seeing those obstacles as opportunities for growth.
Yes,
Rather than as punishments or failures.
exactly. It's about shifting our perspective.
Okay.
When we resist we create suffering.
Right.
But when we accept the ups and downs as part of the natural flow of life,
Yeah.
we find a deeper sense of peace and resilience.
It's like that saying, what you resist persists.
Yeah,
The more we fight against reality, the more we prolong our suffering.
exactly. And remember, emptiness is potential.
Right.
When we face a difficult situation, instead of getting stuck in fear or despair,
Yeah.
we can tap into that emptiness, that potential for growth and transformation.
Okay.
The obstacle becomes the teacher.
It's like those kintsugi bowls, right? Where
Yeah.
they repair the cracks with gold,
Beautiful.
making the bowl even more beautiful because of its imperfections.
Beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
It's about seeing the possibility in every situation, even the challenging ones.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have
That's
a
right.
whole new framework for understanding the world, for approaching my life, my relationships, my work.
And remember, it's not about achieving some kind of perfect state of Daoist enlightenment.
Right.
It's about taking small steps,
Yeah.
making gradual shifts in our perspective,
Okay.
and allowing these ancient teachings to guide us on our journey.
So one final question.
Okay.
If we embrace this Daoist worldview, if we accept the impartiality of nature and the power of emptiness, what does that ultimately mean for our place in the universe? Does it make us feel insignificant
That's a good question.
or strangely liberated?
That's a beautiful question, and one that each of us must answer for ourselves.
Yeah.
But perhaps the true power of the Tao lies not in knowing all the answers, but in embracing the mystery and finding beauty and wonder in the ever-changing flow of life.
Wow, what a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Dao De Jing.
My pleasure.
I have a feeling we'll be revisiting these ideas for a long time to come.
I suspect we will. Until next time.